Hello and welcome, everyone. We got the last of the new overframes today, so I thought it would be a good idea if we toss them all into a tier list, give them all a read for those of you that haven't read them so far, and then at the end we'll make some deck lists with a lot of the new ones that I think are more good competitively or interesting. I'll be honest, I cannot be bothered to make deck lists for most of these archetypes. But kicking it off, we'll get to the DM stuff first here as we hop on over. Dark Magician, the Pharaoh's Servant, going to be the first overframe we take a look at. Name becomes Dark Magician on field and in grave. And you can only use one of the following effects per turn, and only once that turn. You reveal a spell in your hand, special this from hand. Then you set a spell trap that mentions DM from your deck. Then the second effect is Quick Effect. You can discard a spell. Destroy all spell traps your opponent controls. Really strong card. I think the main thing that gates this card from being really strong is the fact that it sets instead of adding. It's a positive and a negative because obviously you can't Ash or Purge this, which is great. But most of the good new Dark Magician spell trap support has been quick plays. So these are cards that you're going to be setting that you won't immediately be able to activate, which isn't like a massive deal. You still have targets for this, but they're just not going to be immediately applicable the way you'd really hope for out of a card like this that is, a 1.5 card combo, right? Obviously, this card's great, though. It reveals spell specials itself, which means generally you're going to be able to immediately make the new Dark Magician Fusion that just came out in the TCG. You have a lot of different options. Obviously, you can search this really easily in a lot of the different ways in DM. So it's a solid card. It's hard to say, though, whether or not it really sets itself apart from a lot of these cards. A lot of this, at least tier list wise, many of these cards are very good, but it's a matter of, do they increase the efficiency of their strategies or the power of their strategies to a level where they will become relevant in a meta context? And at least for DM, these cards, well, we'll go over the second one first before I give my full opinions, but Dark Magical Curtain, each player special summons a Dark Spellcaster from their hand or deck. Then, if you summoned Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl, you can add a spell trap from your deck to your hand that mentions Dark Magician except Curtain. And then the special monsters can't activate their effect the turn they're summoned. So this, I'm almost certain, does work with Dark Magician the Pharaoh's Servant, just because it summons, then checks the name, at which point it will be Dark Magician. Do not 100% quote me on that. Rulings are super weird. These translations are not official, but that should be how this works. This card is obviously incredible. I think there is no surprise that this card is incredible. The fact that it adds instead of setting is great, but the fact that it's a quick play is a little bit awkward, again, because the main monster that you're wanting to search out is setting them instead of searching them. Obviously, you still have a lot of ways to access this card. You have, obviously, Rod is the most generic, but there's plenty of options to get into this card, and it's very, very strong. One of the main things that this card does that is very important is it essentially pseudo replaces Eternal Soul, which, in my opinion, is the worst card in Dark Magician, maybe except for Circle. Circle's also pretty bad, but we can't cut that one yet, unfortunately. This card sort of fills that same niche where it's a way to summon DM on your opponent's turn. Obviously, it does a lot more than that, but you're going to want to search, the second and third copies of this. The second copy in your first turn, so you can set it as an end piece, right? It's going to turn on your Circle the same way searching Eternal Soul would. The only time it turns slower is like that turn 3, 4, 5, and at that point the game's already over. So really great card for Dark Magician. Both of the new cards are obviously very incredible. The issue is I don't think they, again, really take Dark Magician above Rogue. We've been seeing, obviously quite a bit of DM stuff recently. If we do get any more, these could go higher, but at least for now, I think I'm pretty safe with putting them in B tier. After that, we have a couple of Karibo-esque cards. This one's more of a... Actually, let's do this one first. This one's technically the Dark Magician one, even though, I'll be honest, both of these are pretty bad. When your opponent's monster activates its effect, you can special it from hand, and then, while it's on field, once per turn, if your opponent's monster attacks during the damage calculation, or when your opponent activates a monster effect on the field, you can add to your hand or special DM or monster that... Or apologies, or a monster with 300 attack and 200 defense from your deck or graveyard, then you can zero the attack of the monster. There are some funny targets for this because let's be fully like real with ourselves. We are not playing this in DM. This is terrible in DM, no matter how you look at it. So it's a matter of like, what does this include that is very funny? And there are some like genuinely pretty good targets for this. Most of the power patrons. We have Rex for Hire is another one that, you know, is funny at least, but this card is generally just way too clunky and slow to see a lot of use. So we're going to toss it in the D tier. After that, we'll have Winged Kribo Sabatiel level 10. You can reveal this card in your hand and pay half your life. Add Poly or a fusion spell from your deck to your hand, and if you do, shuffle this card into your deck. Also, for the rest of the turn, you can't special from the extra except for heroes. That's the line that ruins this card, unfortunately. Adding fusion spells in hero actually does have like some things you can do with it that are really interesting, but hero is gated by the extra deck monsters, not the tools to summon them. Like this deck has infinite tools to basically do whatever it wants. It just doesn't have anything to make. That's the real problem, right? So this card doesn't really fix that, I'd say. So it's gonna go pretty much right in D tier. This one might be the worst card in the whole set, though. So there's levels to D tier, but yeah, not ideal. Let's hop over to the Blue Eyes cards next. I guess I separated Karibo and Hero, which I did not mean to do, but let's do Blue Eyes first here. When your opponent's card or effect is activated that targets this card on the field, quick effect, you can discard one card and negate the activation, which is nice. Just a little bit of self-protection, even though it is kind of just the worst kind of self-protection, right? Where you have to -1. It has like Phantasmic protection, basically. Which is not terrible, but it only protects itself. When this card is added from deck to hand, or a monster in your possession is destroyed by battle, you can reveal this card in your hand, special it, and then on special, it from hand or deck specifically, it destroys all monsters your opponent controls. It's like pretty good. But the issue, like my problem with this card is how are we putting it in the deck list? Like how are we utilizing it? Because it has strong words on it that do like pretty interesting things. But how are we enabling its effect, right? Because in at least current Blue Eyes lists, there is no way to search this other than Magnemite, which is one of the best ways to enable this card, but it's a one of, right? You have ways to special it from deck are Roar, which require vanilla Blue Eyes, and Spheres. Roar, if they can't out the vanilla Blue Eyes, can't negate this, and can't stop the spell, then their board didn't do anything anyways. And destroying it is probably like still good, but not, you know, like massive. And then off of Spheres, most of the time people are dealing with Spheres, they're going to battle phase to punch over it, right? Or to force it with the battle phase. So if we're summoning this in that kind of situation, it's going to get like one body. And I'd rather be summoning Magnemite at that point. I'm not going to lie. So this card's a bit awkward. I think it probably won't find its way into a lot of different lists, but the fact that you can trigger it off of like Charmy draws is kind of funny, even though I think it's kind of stupid. It's whatever, right? I think it's a very whatever card. I think that's like the biggest thing about it. And I think to me, like that's the definition of meh tier. Even though Blue Eyes like is already a rogue deck, I don't think this even fits into the list. It's a one of inside at best, and I can't really like give it better than C tier in my opinion. And now the card that is going better than C tier is Deep Eyes White Dragon, the Blue Abyss. This card is great. It's always treated as a Blue Eyes card. You can discard this card, add a level 1 Light Tuner from your deck to your hand, which is incredible. If vanilla Blue Eyes or a Blue Eyes Ritual monster is sent to your graveyard, you can target one of them that was sent, special this card from your graveyard, and then it gains some of the attack. So this card is great. It's technically your best Blue Eyes engine starter now. It's better than Sage, obviously, because it just adds the Sage and then is also an additional body later in your turn. The issue I have with this card is, again, it's just not searchable. Like, we can't search this card. So you're only getting the benefit of it when you draw it, which is still good. Like, that's still a power and a percentage increase in power of your deck, right? But saying, okay, the 33% of the time we draw this card roughly, it's better. But it's not like a massive increase that's letting us do anything new, right? Like, that's the thing with this card. So, is it good? Yes, 100%. Is it going to make Blue Eyes meta? Is a different and interesting question, right? I'm in the opinion of no. I think that this card is very much not enough. Even the good things that this card lets you do. I mean, obviously, we'll take a look at lists at the end, but they don't look too incredible to me personally. But what it does do, which is the extra consistency, the extra power when you draw it, is very strong. Next up, we're going to take a look at the two new hero cards in the set. First up, favorite hero Flame Wingman, the new quote-unquote super poly target that a lot of people are talking about. Two monsters with the same type but different attributes. All of its effects are generic as well. When an attack is declared involving this card and a monster with 2200 or more attack, you can make it gain 1000 attack. Then you can special a level 4 or lower monster from your hand in defense position. If a monster was destroyed by battle this turn, quick effect, you can fusion from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field. This card is very weird to me because obviously it is a super poly target. It's the anti-Mud Dragon super poly target. But the issue is, right, the reason Mud Dragon is so good is because same attribute, different type is like very, very, very common, right? There's only technically 7, but 6 attributes in Yu-Gi-Oh, right? So there's only so many an archetype can be. Obviously, there's still plenty of archetypes that vary their types and attributes, but there's not that many archetypes off the top of my head that are same type, different attribute. Or at least that want to end on that specifically, right? Because when we're thinking about this in context of a super poly target, it is just weaker than Garua and Mud Dragon. Like, Garua and Mud Dragon have better effects than this, right? So it's hard to say if this card is going to be incredible or not. I'm personally of the opinion that it'll probably end up being quite a bit weaker. So for me, it'll go in C tier. I mean, this card's viability is 100% tied to Super Poly. I don't even think it's worth making this in Hero in any way except for Super Poly. So again, I think it's a fine Super Poly target. It does that like as well as it does, but I think it's generally going to be like your begrudging super poly option that you put in there if you have to, which doesn't feel great, right? So I think C tier is pretty relevant for that, or I guess pretty realistic. The other new hero card, favorite hero Shining Flare Wingman, 1 fusion plus 1 face-up monster on the field. Again, technically a super poly target. Always treated as an E-hero. If this card is specialed from the extra, you can shuffle 5 monsters from your graveyard into the deck and then draw 2 cards, and if you do, it gains 1000 attack. If it destroys a monster by battle, inflict damage. This card is terrible, right? Like, we're all on the same page with this card being terrible. I think it's probably, like... I don't think there's any argument for it to be outside of D tier. I think it might replace, like, a worse card in the hero extra deck, but I don't think that's a real upside for a card to be replacing like a way worse card, and then it still feels bad. So I don't think there's that much complaints. I mean, it's like fine as a recursion option, right? Like, you can summon this near the end, make it into something else, just to recycle a bunch of your resources. It's just not that stellar in my opinion, for sure. As we head into the Sidra stuff, Sidra getting 2 cards in this set. Future Fusion Nova, the first of the 2. This is just branded fusion for light machines that you have to send Sidra for. It's just branded fusion. It does lock you to machines, though, is the big thing. It hard locks 2 machines. Thankfully, it's after card resolves, so you can still do some stuff, and then Future Fusion Nova. This card, I think, is strong. I just don't think there's any, like, truly inane targets for it yet. Including the new one, but we'll get to that in a moment. I think it has potential. I mean, you can, for example, like, just make, like, Mechava, even though you're not going to play Alistair, but you get my point, right? Like, there's a lot of stuff you can make off of this, but none of it has really impressed me so far. I think it's a card that is high quality and has a lot of potential, and especially in these 2 bottom tiers, this is, like, garbage, and then this is, like, okay, it has some potential, but, like, it's still probably bad. Right, so that's where this card goes in my opinion. Like, it's a solid card that has potential but needs like an insane target. That and being continuous is like just worse than being a normal spell, right? Like just randomly losing to MST. I know that's more relevant now with Radiant Typhoon in the meta than it normally is, but even things like Cosmic, right? If a card like this is ever good, is very easy to shut down. So I think it's solid, but not incredible. I think C tier is fair. Cyber End Dragon, the Decisive Strike Dragon, 3 machine monsters with 21 or more attack. Pretty good summoning condition for that for that branded fusion, considering you can send all the materials. Must be fusion summoned. If this card is fusion summoned using only light monsters, you can pay 4,000, add limited removal from your deck to your hand, and then if it battles, it deals piercing as well. It gains 2 more attacks if it has different attack than its current attack. So basically, if you use limited removal or I guess a different attack gain on it, then it gets really big and punches really hard. Wow, scary. No, Konami prints these kind of cards all the time, and they're terrible every time. Like these big big beat stick guys where I'm gonna go punch you in the face really hard are cool. And that's what overframes are about, which is like fine. I'm not ragging on Konami, but this card is just not that good, right? Like you'll play maybe one copy of it. You probably play it for this part more than anything, right? Like you get to send some pretty cool stuff because this is generic. And you may not even have to care about this part, right? Like you can just say, why do I need liver removal? This is just going to let me send 3 machines from deck to grave with 221 or more attack, right? This does limit your options. Like you can't send like Orchist, which would have been really sick, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it. That's probably why that card has that word on it, but yeah. I think it's an interesting card. I just don't think it really... I think it's hard carried by its enabler, which means it's bad. Don't get me wrong, cards work outside of a vacuum, but this is just not a good card, in my opinion, so... it's probably like this. I'm not going to worry too much about the ordering in tiers, but I think it's interesting. We'll maybe go over it at the end. Next up, we're going to go over the, I guess, 5Ds support, I'll call it. I'm going to call it just mainly the Synchron/Synchro stuff. First card up is going to be Stardust Dragon Victim Sanctuary. Level 8 Synchro, 1 tuner, 1 non-tuner, generic summoning requirement. When your opponent activates a card or effect in response to the activation of your card or effect, you contribute this card, negate the opponent's effect, and if you do, destroy that card. If your monster was tributed, if your monsters was tributed this turn, you can banish this card from your graveyard, special Stardust Synchro monster from your extra deck. Namely, something I want to point out, this counts for Nibiru and like Lava Golem and Kaijus technically, right? Which is relevant, especially Nibiru. But the issue is none of these are good, or the ones that are good you either can't summon or don't get their on summon effect. So this second effect is kind of a brick. Like you're summoning Axel Stardust to go into Vanilla Stardust to synchro again, which is just not that good. So we're mainly talking about this effect, right? And this is a powerful effect on paper. I 100% agree, especially when it's protecting things like Speeder. This is very, very strong. The issue is you already have a lot of ways to protect Speeder, specifically in a lot of those style of cards with a lot of the new waves of support. So this card definitely isn't as good or mandatory or needed as it otherwise would have been without a lot of that new support. Again, the issue is this is just so telegraphed that your opponent's never going to actually let you do this unless they want you to, right? Like, there's very few things in Yu-Gi-Oh! That have to chain directly to your opponent. Obviously, hand traps and yada, 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 but you're using those before you get to this most of the time, right? So, it's tough to say. I'm not a huge fan of this card. I don't think it's that strong personally. I think there's a reality where it can pop off, but I don't think we're living in that reality, so... I'm going to say C tier. I don't think it's like terrible. Like it can justify its place in an extra deck at the very least, but I don't see it as being a huge standout. And I'll say that for sure. Next up, we got Starjunk Synchron. This is one of the, I believe, first overframes we got. For a Synchro Summon, you can make it any Synchron tuner. Nice little side benefit, but I don't actually think this comes up at all. If it's in your hand, you can target a level 2 or lower monster in your graveyard, special it from your hand, and if you do, special that monster from grave, but its effects are negated. Also, you can't special except for Synchros for the rest of the turn. Then you can banish it from grave. This effect is just so it has the words Junk Warrior in its text. You do not need to read what this card does. I promise. I really do. The fact that it can banish it from grave just means like you can randomly banish it and then bring it back with patter, which is nice. I guess that's like one side benefit you can do with that. But yeah, this effect is here so it says Junk Warrior and is searchable by all the Junk Warrior support. That's it. But this card is good. I think, I mean, for those of you that saw one of my previous videos, I put out a like Synchron combo that didn't need this card, which is simultaneously a good and bad thing for this card, right? Because if the best combo doesn't need it, that means it's a little bit weaker. But the fact that you don't need it means it can be your thing that gets you to speeder, right? Like it's a free thing that your combo doesn't need that gets you to the best card in your deck, which is good. Like I think there's no like argument about, hey, this is a one card speeder that doesn't go at all minus at all. You just need to set up the level 2 engrave and it's speeder. Congrats, right? Strong card. I just think it's probably closer to a one of. I think it's probably going to be one of the more impactful one ofs, but I don't think it can go higher than B tier, even though I think it's a B tier card in an A tier deck, if that makes sense. Like if it was like a insta 3 of, obviously then it would go in like ARS, but it being like a fine 1 to 2 of is like good. I just think it's not as good as a lot of the cards that I know I want to put in ANS tier. So we'll see if you all agree with me at the end of this, but yeah. Heading into the next card, we're getting a couple of back-to-back absolute heaters here. Synchro Emergency. This came out yesterday, and people have already found a way to zero-turn kill with it. But if your opponent controls a monster, you can activate this card from your hand. So it has the, I guess, imperm condition, even though that's not exactly how imperm works. But you cannot special summon from the extra deck until the end of the next turn, except for synchro monsters. Special one monster from your hand, but its effects are negated. Then, if your opponent controls a monster special from the extra deck, you can special a synchro from your, or apologies, a synchron monster from your deck. And then you can banish it from grave to immediately synchro summon. So, this card is very strong. I don't want anyone to think it's not at least strong when I say this, but I'm undecided on how strong this card is, right? Because if it's just a good card in Synchron, then it's like solidly A tier, right? Like it's a good A tier card in Synchron. It's a great hand trap, but it's something that they get to use. If this sees play in like every Synchro deck, then it's an easy S tier, right? There's a ton of Synchro decks coming out that are getting a lot of support. I've tested this in like RDA. Obviously, Synchron is the obvious one. But then I've tested it in Cool Tune, where it's been very strong so far in some very brief theory and testing. There's a couple more at the end that I'll showcase as well, but truly incredible options off of this card. The one thing I will say and point out, the Red Rising idea, even in Synchron, is terrible. You should be summoning Black Rose Dragon off of this card almost 100% of the time. Like, that is the card that you should be going for. There is almost nothing you can be doing off of this card turn 0 that is better than Black Rose, including that dumb, like, Steam Synchron 0-turn kill combo or the, you know, the big Red Rising combo. Both of those are terrible. I think if you sleeve up a copy of Steam Synchron and put it on your regional deck list, I should be allowed to ban you. So that's my opinion on that part of it. But in general, this card is great. It's just a matter of, like, if it's Synchron or every Synchro deck that plays it, whether or not it's SRA. And then, immediately after one Meta Warping card, we get to another one. Crimson Dragon Quetzalcoatl. This card is also crazy. I think this card is probably the best Overframe. And that is without exaggeration. This card is incredible. Gains the attack of all your Synchros combined. If it is Synchro summoned, you can special as many Dragon Synchros from your graveyard as possible, and then basically you can't special for the rest of the turn. And then, on top of that, when your opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you can return one of their Dragon Synchro you control to the extra deck and then negate the activation. This card is incredibly strong, but for a reason that we haven't really, like, been able to use in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Because what this card lets you do when you're comboing and when you're trying to think about how you're using it, it lets you climb through your end bosses. Like generally when you're synchroing, like when you see these massive, like terrible, like TikTok YouTube combo like synchro boards, you're using like just an obscene amount of bodies, and that's what synchro is sort of designed around. What a lot of these mechanics are designed around, right? They need to give you a ton of bodies because you need to make like a 7 and then an 8 with 2 more bodies, and then you need to make a 10 with 2 more bodies, maybe even 3, right? But what Quetzalcoatl allows you to do, as I'll use a RDA combo as an example of this. I'll see if I edit it in or if I get lazy, but you get to go from like Red Rising, summon back Crimson Resonator, summon a bunch of Resonators. Then you get to go Red Rising +1 into Zaylin, +1 into Crystal Wing, +2 into Dispatter, and then +2 into Quetzalcoatl. That's like 7 negates from like 6 bodies total, maybe 7. That is way less bodies than Synchro has generally been able to operate with. So that's the huge thing with this card. It's not that it's like, obviously it reads crazy. I think most people agree it reads crazy, but that's the extra thing it allows you to do when you're comboing that maybe is a little bit less, obvious, right? Like, I think I realized it when I was doing that exact RDA combo. I went from, again, Red Rising, Zaylin, Crystal Wing, Patter into this. The whole time protecting from Nibiru. The whole time, like, nothing was touching me. And it's, like, it just felt great. I think that's one of the big uses for this card. And I think the decks that can utilize it are going to. I think Zaylin existing as well is a huge buff to this card. So I think that's the reason I'm going to put it at the top of this list. I think this is the best Overframe. It'll be the one that is the most annoying if it's ever good. That's for damn sure. So I'm really interested to see if my prediction comes true. Again, this card might not be insta-insane on drop, but I know there will be a deck that will use this card and it will feel ridiculously oppressive. So that's my prediction on that. I could be overhyping. I've been testing Synchron a lot more than a lot of the other stuff, so I could be very biased on that regard. So please keep that in mind. But moving into the XYZ support, we have number 39, Utopia, the Envoy of Light. This probably is the worst card in any of these sets. Detach one material from this card, target a monster you control. The first time it will be destroyed by battle or card effect this turn. It is not destroyed. When the second attack of this turn is declared, you can make this card gain 2,500 attack, and if you do, it gains this effect. When it destroys a monster by battle, you can summon it. This sucks. Like, this is really, really, really bad. Like, terrible bad. I don't actually know if you can summon this off of Utopia Double. I can't be bothered to check. Even if you can, it's still bad. If I need to explain to you why this card is bad, I'm sorry. I'm not doing that. Can't be bothered. This card's terrible. Let's move on to the Gagagas. Gagaga Girl, Cell Phone Subtraction. If your opponent special summons a monster from the extra deck, you can target a face-up monster you control, special this from your hand, and then immediately XYZ summon. You can basically make it rank 3 or the rank of the monster you target. And then when this card is detached to activate an XYZ monster's effect, you can 0 the attack of opponent's monster, sorry. This card is also bad. I think XYZ by far got shafted. Like, all the other mechanics got some really solid tools. XYZ just got completely, like, nothing. All 3 of the, like, Gagaga / like, Yuma cards are terrible. This one may be the most of all of them. Generally, again, XYZ decks don't want to end on a random, like, monster to do stuff with. So why, like, there's just no, like, use case, really, a lot of the time for this card. Even if you do want to combo in a way that enables this, it's just not better than searching the extender and making it a lot of the time. You can play around breakers, but it's just extremely gimmicky. If this turn zeroed, or if this was, like, doing anything better, then it might have been good, but yeah, this card is not good. Really not good. Slightly better, but not by much. Gagaga Magician, Gagaga Magic. If this card is in your hand, you can special summon it and one other Zubababa, Gagaga, Go Dododo monster from your hand or graveyard, and then immediately XYZ summon. But you have to essentially summon one of those types. Most of the time it's going to be Number or Gagaga, let's be honest. Those are, like, the only ones that are relevant. I guess there's one of the ZS's that is good, I think, but you're going to summon a Number or you're going to summon the Gagaga Girl to search more guys. That's going to be the 2 things you do with this card, like, 90% of the time. The Other upside is you're able to use it as one of the other levels. Obviously, in like Onomat Ryzeal or like Onomat in general, which is what this is support for, your available levels are like 3, 4, 6. So probably 6 is your best option with this card. There's just not enough like insane rank 6s. Like the only other thing I didn't mention is the one that searches Gagagas of the new Onomats is the worst one, which just by proxy makes this card slightly less searchable, which makes it slightly less good, right? So I think that's I think C is like very even maybe generous, right? Like I would consider putting this card down in D tier. And I think on a previous recording of this video I might have, but either way. This card is like low C tier for sure. Heading into the Galaxy Eyes cards, I think the Galaxy Eyes cards are very exciting, even though I think they are generally not going to be enough to make Galaxy Eyes meta. The first of the two, Galaxy Defense Robot Orbital 7. You contribute this card from your hand or field. Take one Photon monster and one Galaxy monster from your deck. Add one to your hand, send the other to graveyard. Also, you can't special except for light monsters, which does not come up, I promise. If a Galaxy Eyes monster is special to your field, you can special it from your graveyard, but banish it when it leaves the field. This is essentially everything you would ever want in a piece of Galaxy Eyes support. I think this is like one of the most custom cards you could maybe print for an archetype. It's just that Galaxy Eyes is kind of a couple steps too far away from being like relevant. But this card does let you do some like really great stuff. There's tons of good graveyard effects in the archetype. There's tons of good on summon effects in the archetype that this lets go through, which is crazy to me. Like it doesn't negate the monster it summons. So this card is like a truly cracked absurd, like from a card quality perspective. But I don't know if it really converts to being like something that pushes Galaxy Eyes to the next level, right? For me, it probably ends up in B tier. I think we'll see some like a couple of funny tops out of Galaxy Eyes, but I don't think we'll see anything like too crazy. It's like probably around the power of like the DM stuff, honestly. But the DM stuff gets to play Primite, so who knows? Looking at the other new card, Neo Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon Photon Howling. Once per turn, you can also XYZ summon it using a rank 8 you control. That means these words just do not matter. If it's XYZ summoned, you can take a Photon, either put it under this monster or summon it from your deck in defense position. Wonder which one I'm going to do. Shocker. And then quick effect, you can detach 3, tribute 1 other XYZ monster, and if you do, negate the effects of all other face-up cards on the field until the end of the turn. This card is, again, obviously incredible. I think Galaxy Eyes, from a pure card quality perspective, is like second place after like the Synchro and Synchro stuff, probably. These cards are all insane. Like, they're all very, very, very high quality. It's just a matter of, like, do they push Galaxy Eyes to the next level? Probably not. I think if you get a couple more new good cards, it's very possible. The main thing that this card does really, really well is it goes straight on top of Dragluxion. Dragluxion also doesn't detach for its search. So by putting this on Dragluxion, you enable this effect. It was a card that wasn't doing much anyways, and you get to summon a Photon for free. So, obviously really good. You already wanted to make Dragluxion, so really, really great, really incredible card. But again, I think it's going to go right next to these, because they're both, like, this card's probably better, but they're both, like, equally really strong support cards. They're just for a very mediocre archetype, unfortunately. Next up, we got some that make me a little bit sad. It's the Pendulum support. I will say this before I review any of these cards. I am extremely biased. I played probably the most broken Pendulum deck of ever, and everything since has looked really terrible. Ever since Electromite left, honestly. So we'll review all these regardless. I'm going to try to keep this as filtered as possible through like normal glasses, but we'll see. During main phase, you can destroy this card, and if you do, add 1 Pendulum monster with 15 or less attack from your deck to your hand. Also, for the rest of the turn, you cannot Pendulum... or unless you Pendulum Summon after this effect resolves, you cannot activate monster effects on the field. So similar to the Beyond the Pendulum lock, it just says, hey, once this happens, you're not doing much. You have to immediately Pendulum Summon. You can mess around with your skills a little bit, but you got to Pen Summon. You get multiple Pendulum Summons in the deck, especially through the new Zark spell. I guess new is not the word I'd use for that. That card's like, what, 3 years, 4 years old now? But yeah, I think this card. I mean, other thing, the monster effect is straight up nothing. Do not bother. So we're basically reading just the pendulum effect. Scale 4 is awkward, but again, obviously it pops itself, so you don't have to worry about that as much. Searching anything with 15 or less, though, is a really strong effect. The issue is one of the main things you want to search, which is the new overframe, like wants to summon itself and do stuff, right? So it is a little bit awkward. It's by no means a terrible card, but I think it does have an issue with being more than a one of. I think the fact that like due to some I think let's read all of them first and then we'll go back because I think Pendulum just is very intertwined as a mechanic with a lot of its cards. So Horoscope Sorcerer, the Stargazer Magician, when an opponent activates a spell card, or apologies, when an opponent's activated spell card or effect resolves, you can negate it, then destroy this card. You must control a Magician Pendulum monster or Odd Eyes monster to do that. So this is similar to Angelica's Angelic Ring or Magician's Left Hand, where it's able to negate literally anything, including Super Poly, including Droplet, including like this can negate everything, unless it specifically says it cannot be negated, which I believe is only on Gordian Schneider, if I'm not mistaken. There's probably some other like bad spells, but that's the only relevant one that pops out to me. And then this is extra relevant because this is optional compared to Angelica's Angelic Ring and the Magician's Right Hand, or left or right hand, I apologize, don't remember which one. But this is optional, which is way stronger. One of the main issues with Angelica's Angelic Ring, even though it is a strong card, is that it has to negate the first spell, right? This letting you choose is really, really strong effect. And that's just its skill effect. Let's go to the monster effect next. You can discard one other Magician, Performer, Pal, or Odd Eyes monster, special this from your hand. If this card is special summoned, you can add a Pendulum monster with 2,500 attack from your deck to your hand. And then you can target one Pendulum monster you control, destroy it. Then you can add a face-up Pendulum monster from your extra deck to your hand. So these are essentially three just... I mean, there's the self-summon and then three insane effects. Or two insane effects, sorry. Adding 25 specifically is incredible. It lets you add... Spoiler, the third new overframe. It lets you add, OG Astrograph. It lets you add Supreme King Gate Magician. There's a ton of good targets at 25 specifically. I think it's probably the best number you could have put on this card. It also adds the new Odd Eyes as well, in case you want to go new Odd Eye, like this, new Odd Eyes back into this for the negate later while you still get access to all the stuff that you're doing. Again, this card is really good. Like, really good. Same with Astrograph Sorcerer, the Star Magician, the third one. Pendulum effect. During your main phase, you can destroy this card, and if you place one Pendulum monster whose scale is 1 from your hand or deck into your Pendulum zone, except Astrograph Sorcerer, but it cannot activate its Pendulum effect this turn. To my knowledge, this is probably just 90% of the time going to tag into Horoscope Sorcerer, just for the negate, which is good. I think there's a lot of times where that'll come up pretty relevantly. And then its monster effect. If a face-up monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. Then you special one of those destroyed monsters from your extra deck or graveyard, which is great. During the main phase, quick effect, you can tribute this card. Then you can fusion summon one Dragon Fusion monster from your extra deck by shuffling its materials from your field and or face-up extra deck into the graveyard. I promise this is summoning Vortex like 90 to 95% of the time. I do promise. This card is great, though. Like, this card does... Again, pretty much everything you would want to do. The whole Magician game plan is all about self-popping. You're going to keep a lot of your advantage that you'd normally, go even on, not even lose out on a lot of the time. So this is a really, really solid tool, especially with the way it pairs with OG Astrograph as well. I mean, you can say that as well about, obviously, Horoscope Sorcerer. I believe the OCG has 3 Astrograph, which we do not. Obviously, we only have the 1, but I think there's a really strong chance that next ban list we get 3 Astrograph to try to push this stuff. Or we get Electromite. I don't think Electromite is likely. I think 3 Astrograph is more likely, but hard to say, right? Especially if we do get 3 Astrograph, I think a lot of this stuff can pop off, but I think as is, the 3 of these are, like, good. I think I'm going to put these 2 in B tier and then the Odd Eyes in C tier. I think the Odd Eyes, I would say, is the weakest of the 3 just because it doesn't have a good monster effect at all, and its scale effect is good but limiting. I think it's a fine one of to search. It's obviously you need an odd eyes for Vortex as well, so it fulfills that condition without playing any of like the terrible odd eyes cards, although there are some that can probably fight for that spot. But yeah, I think this is like very fair to put them as they are here. I think there is like a power gap between these two and the odd eyes, but I think they're all working together to do what they want to do for the archetype, right? And what they do is strong. It's just whether or not it's like incredible, right? So, yeah. Next up, we're going to go to the Link support, Decode Talker Integration, 2+ effect monsters. This card in the extras monster zone gains 500 attack for every other Link monster on the field and in the graveyards. Your opponent can't target it with card effects as well. Quick effect, you contribute one monster this card points to, send one Cybers from your extra deck to the graveyard. Also, this card can make up to 2 attacks on monsters during each battle phase this turn. So this card is very like awkward because obviously it has the same effect as Dark Fluid, right? With a different sort of condition. I think this card is just way worse than Dark Fluid, especially because Cybers is still a deck type that just spawns infinite bodies, right? Like that is the Cybers thing. You're gonna have bodies. So it's a matter of like, why would you make integration and tribute a thing, which is like 4 Link material minimum, instead of just making the Dark Fluid? You can send the Spell Trap negate that this card can't utilize, the Cybers Chimera, and then you also can still just send the Aggregator on your opponent's turn, right? I think this card, again, it does some interesting things, and I think there's maybe a reality where it comes up in a line where you don't want to play Dark Fluid, and this like fits in perfect, and you want to send the Cybers Chimera and then link it into a big guy, but I think the odds of that are exceedingly small. Again, I think this is one of the much weaker cards in this set, and it's going into Who tier for sure. I'm not going to think about too much within the tiers until maybe the end. I'll decide at that time whether or not I think it's worth it. But yeah, I think this card is just very, very aggressively mediocre, which shouldn't be a massive surprise, but yeah. The second new card, Cybers Code Magician. Searchable off of pre-prep, which is literally all this line says. If a Link monster you control will be used as Link material. For a Cybers monster, this card in your hand can be used as Link material. If this card is sent from your hand or field to the graveyard, you can activate this effect. If it was sent from the hand, you can Foolish a Cybers. If it was sent from field, you can Special a Cybers from deck. Both obviously very powerful effects, but the issue with this card is more obviously not about its enablers. It would have been, other than for one of the other overframes, but this card is very interesting, and I think it does have a spot in potential Cybers deck list, but I think the reason it's going to see play in those deck lists is because of this card, Cybers Contract Witch. If this card is Link summoned, or an opponent's monster, or a monster is special summoned to a zone this card points to, you can send a spell from your hand or face-up field to the graveyard as cost, add a ritual monster from your deck to your hand. Second effect, you can target a ritual monster, you can target a ritual, fusion, synchro, or XYZ, special summon one monster from your graveyard with the same type, so like Spellcaster Warrior, but different monster type. So it would have to be a ritual, fusion, or synchro if you target an XYZ, or just drop whichever one you're targeting from this list here. And then you can only use each effect once per turn, obviously. When I'm evaluating this card in my head, I'm going to assume Habakiri is banned by the time this card comes out, if not about to be banned. I know the Mitsurugi structure deck is coming out, I think, a month before Overframes. So, actually, I don't even know if we have a TCG release date for these cards, now that I think about it. So, yeah, Habakiri, I'm going to assume is banned by the time this card comes out. If it's not, this turns into, like, Verte Anaconda, but for like rituals, basically. So that's just how I'm personally going to do it, because I'm almost certain that card is going to be gone. If it's not, like, you can still do some gimmicky stuff. I think most decks that are going to cram this to play a Mitsu engine are bad. So I think that's not something we have to think about like too aggressively. It's more a matter of like, what are actual ritual decks going to do with this card? And there's some extremely potent applications in like, I mean, any number of ritual decks, like Voiceless potentially off the top of my head. Drytron can play this card. You can play it in, I mean, almost any ritual deck in the game that has same type, which is like very common, right? Um, but yeah, I think this card is very strong. I'm not going to put it in S tier. I think it is good. I think this card goes in like C tier, bottom of C tier, and then this goes in A tier for sure. I don't think this will warp the meta. Even if Habakiri is still legal, I don't think it'll warp the meta. We're seeing a lot of like funny haha we can search Habakiri things recently. They've been printing a lot of ritual support in general, and I'm pretty sure none of it is going to be good if it's searching Habakiri. I think if you're playing all those terrible cards to search Habakiri, your deck is really bad. So that's my opinion on it. Let's see. What do we have left? Not many left here. I'm going to put them all into up next, but we're going to go over the Rocket / Boral cards next. These ones are very interesting. We're going to go over Liberator first. Boral Liberator Dragon, 3+ effect monsters, link 5. You can only special it once per turn. And then once per turn during the battle phase, quick effect, you can place one monster your opponent controls into a zone this card points to and take control of it. Your opponent can't respond to this effect. Once per chain, if this card is in your graveyard, quick effect, you can target one monster you control, destroy it, and then special this card. So realistically, you're not actually summoning this most of the time. You're gonna cheat it out off of the link 5 from Burst Protocol that says at the start of battle phase you summon a Boral. The thing that this lets you do is it lets you go battle, summon Boral, and steal with Prio immediately before your opponent can blink or respond to like almost any of it, right? So very strong OTK option. Whether or not that's necessary for Rocket is up for debate for sure. I think this is somewhere between the 14th and 17th card in the extra deck, depending on your variant. So there's a rationale to cut this or play Boral Sword instead in a lot of situations. But it does have like a very relevant and strong effect. It's just a matter of whether or not it is something that comes up consistently enough to want to see play in the deck. So for that reason, I think I'm going to put it like mid to high C tier. Like I think it has the potential to see play in a deck that is very strong, but it's not going to drastically increase or decrease the efficiency of that deck. As we head into the card that pretty much will make the deck incredible, Rocket Barrage. Circular a Dark Dragon from your deck to your graveyard, except for a level 5 to summon it, which just this part is incredible. Locks you to Dark. Oh no. But then, when a Link monster's effect is activated that targets this card on the field, quick effect, you can destroy this card, special 1 Rocket from your hand, deck, graveyard, and or banishment. From every of those locations. So if you're able to set up for this card properly, which most of the archetype is able to do very easily at this point, this is simultaneously a 1-card combo that does basically everything you want while enabling you to extend into some truly ridiculous boards. It pairs very well with the Link 3 that we just got in Burst Protocol, as well as the Link 2 that we're going to get in Blazing Dominion. The question about this card and the deck in general is not about like how do I say this? It's more about if the end board is enough, right? Because the end board is the counter trap in hand, both Link 5s, and an IP or Draco Berserker or Dispatter, right? Which is a good end board. I think that's a very solid end board. You end on a Magnamut Search for Jerusalem as well, which is really strong. It's a matter of like, is the in between enough to make this card good, like good enough for S tier? Because we're debating on A and S for this card, almost certainly. These are two of the most custom effects maybe ever put on a card. It's a matter of like where is it going to land immediately on drop? Like, does it immediately turn Rocket into a tier 1, tier 2 deck? I think the answer to that is a decently chanced yes. Like, I think that it will be at least tier 2 after Blazing Dominion and Overframes, if not like tier 1.5. I don't know if I'll go as high as tier 1 just because, again, ban list and whatnot, it gets a little murky trying to predict that far in the future, but this card and the deck it's tied to are both very, very potent, and this card is a massive part of that. So I think it does belong in S tier. I think both of these cards have an argument for not being in S tier. I think it's hard to say if they'll warp the meta on release or if it'll take, maybe another card or in just a little bit of time, but they are truly both incredible cards. Also, let me double check before I say this, but yeah, I mean this card is just incredible. It doesn't have to summon from every location as well, which is at least what I saw as a common misunderstanding. So yeah, I think for me it is very much in like S tier personally, just from a lot of, especially compared to a lot of these. I think it'll be more relevant than, for example, Blue Eyes or most of what the Witch will do. But yeah, I think I don't know. I'm running out of words to say that that card's broken. Three sort of one-offs at the end here. Clear Wing Synchro Dragon of the Four Heavenly Dragons. Man, they are just making these names. I'm surprised they went for names this long on Overframes. Honestly, respect. Always treated as a Speedroid card. If this card is special summoned, you can target an effect monster your opponent controls, and if you do, this card gains attack equal to that original attack after you destroy it. When your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you can special summon a level 4 or lower wind tuner from your hand or graveyard, but its effect negated, then immediately synchro summon. Doesn't have to use that monster, but generally probably will be using that monster. It's weird. This card is good. The fact that its first effect is on summon, though, really does make it quite a bit worse. I know why they didn't say just like, hey, when your opponent activates a monster effect, destroy it, negate it, and then gain some attack. But it felt like that's probably what this card would have had to do to be really strong. For me, it's either like bottom of C, top of D. Again, I'm not too familiar with Speedroid personally. That'll be a gap in my knowledge here, but I would say probably bottom of D tier. I've seen a lot of what Speedroid does, and this doesn't feel like it really fits with a lot of that. I think a lot of your... I guess you can Kite Drake Quick Sync, but... Okay, bottom of C tier. Bottom of C tier. I convinced myself with just saying, like, hey, Quick Sync Kite Drake is pretty good. But, yeah, it's not a incredible card. But it's not a card that you're, like, mad at, for sure, if you're a Speedroid player. So I think C is fair. Then we go to Red Dragon Archfiend's Chain, the RDA support card. You can activate this card the turn is set by revealing Red Dragon Archfiend in your extra deck. There's no locks on this card, so you can technically play this in anything, just if you play RDA in your extra, which is kind of interesting. Activate this card by revealing any number of monsters in your hand, then target effect monsters your opponent controls up to the number of tuners revealed, +1. So you can just use this as an imperm that you can set, or apologies, activate the turn it's set. If you really want to, bare minimum, or again, plenty of hand traps or tuners, so that is also another thing that can happen. They lose some effect, or apologies, I guess I didn't finish reading the card. The targeted monsters lose attack, effects are negated. And essentially, when all of the targets leave, destroy this card. I think this card is like... I actually do really like the card design here, but I don't think it's that much higher than like a good C tier. It sort of does feel the same as the Odd Eyes, where it's not a card you're complaining about having in your deck, but it's just like a solid one of that has some flexibility for going second that isn't bad by any means. I think that's like a very fine place for a card to be. You already kind of wanted to play a searchable trap in main in RDA, maybe a second one in your side. There's a lot of ways to search RDA cards in the deck. So I think this is like a very fine option for that deck that, you know, maybe this is the one you main and then you side one of the more blowout ones that does nothing going second, for example, right? I think this is like a fine option, but likely won't see play outside of RDA where you can just search it. Though of note, you can search this generically off of the new RDA Synchro 8 as just a generic imperm search. I don't think that's worth it, but it is an option, just to keep in mind. And then for the last card, we get our Predaplant card, Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, the Four Heavenly Dragons. Seems like we're getting 4 Heavenly Dragons out here. But if it's special summoned, you can target one other face-up monster on the field, changes attack to 0, negate its effects, and its attribute becomes dark. And then, when your opponent activates a card or effect, you can fusion summon one dark fusion monster from your extra deck using dark monsters on the field, including this card. So this is obviously, again, a new Super Poly target with 2 dark monsters on the field being its requirements. It is a strict upgrade in most senses to the existing Starving Venom that generally hasn't been used as a Super Poly target since... oh god, what, like 2019, maybe 2021 for a little bit. It's been a minute since I've sleeved up a Starving Venom personally. But this is a really big buff to what Starving Venom wanted to do. Like Starving Venom and Trifolium to a certain extent as well were sort of the anti-dark combo deck super poly targets. And that's something that's come up quite a few times in history, right? We had like Dark Warrior, we had Goki, we had like a lot of stuff that is just pure dark. It's the most common attribute for a reason. So that means that this is just a really strong super poly target. You can fuse into like Trifolium if you want to wipe 4 total bodies, which probably won't come up much. But the main thing you're going to make with this is Dragostapelia. Sort of like we were talking about earlier with the hero overframe that's the super poly target. This is an effect that actually rivals like Muddragon Garua in power, where like the new hero fusion just kind of doesn't do anything. It's just a super poly target. It feels like super poly targets now need to actually do something, right? Like we look at the current super poly targets, it's like Secretarion is a floodgate, Saint Azamina is a floodgate on top of being a super poly target. Garou Muddragon is like targeting protection and draws respectively. Like this card, it feels like it is actually on that level of power that the super poly targets need to be at. So I think this card, even though I just spent a little bit of time like going over how much I do think it is good, I think I am still going to put it in C tier. I think it deserves a pretty high C tier, but its viability is somewhat tied to just how good Super Poly is in a sense. I will say I'm not too familiar with the new Predaplant cards. I gave them a read, but I'm just not as personally knowledgeable about that archetype. So it's very possible that this card is very strong in Predaplant. And I know it's getting quite a few cards in Blazing Dominion, so this could very much be higher. This is one that I'm probably wrong on, but I think high C tier is like very reasonable either way. As its usage as a super poly target, I'd say it's like mid to somewhere in C tier. And then if it's very strong in Predaplant and Predaplant ends up being like rogue or half decent, then I think it goes up to B for sure. While we have a little bit of time here, decided it would be fun to go over some prospective deck lists. Just a couple of notes before we get started. I'm not really going to talk about non-engine just because it's very dependent on the format in which we are going to be playing these cards with. Obviously, we don't have a confirmed release date yet, so not going to talk too much about the generic non-engine. Also, side decks are generally just ideas and stuff that maybe I didn't have a chance to fit, or they're just some stuff you generally see in the side. So let's start it off with the list that's been on your screen for a moment here, Blue Eyes. We're obviously utilizing Deep Eyes White Dragon, the Blue Abyss. It's the card that I think generally pushes this archetype the most. Although I will say, Quetzalcoatl is very strong in this deck. We see angles with Neokaiser Seahorse. I think that's just a card I kind of forgot to put in the list. Apologies. But Neokaiser Seahorse should probably be in there somewhere. You could look to cut 1 Sage for Neokaiser Seahorse just due to the 3 copies you're getting off of Deep Eyes White Dragon. I think that's something you could try to toy around with. But Quetzalcoatl is extremely potent in this deck for multiple different reasons. The main one, in my opinion, is that you're able to really hard commit into double Spirit Dragon for almost no fear, because the level 11 Nibiru token plus any of your tuners goes into Quetzalcoatl very, very easily, which is obviously incredible for recursion. You get to summon back all your spirits. You will not be able to summon back Ultimate Spirit, unfortunately, but I don't think you would hope to, or I guess expect to be able to. But this card is really, really good. Another thing you can do is you can very aggressively go through your Crimson Dragon line turn 1 for it. You can go double Spirit, 1 into Ultimate Spirit, 1 into Crimson Dragon for Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl summon back both spirits. And then you have Ultimate Spirit, 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 Quetzalcoatl, which is just a great board, right? Like that is an option you also have. I think it has a lot of flexibility and definitely will be in the extra deck. It's just a matter of how much it comes up. I know, obviously, people are going to be a little upset that I didn't even put this in the list. I don't even think this would make the side deck, personally, but I put it here just to have it here more than anything. But I think this is roughly what Blue Eyes would look like. There is a separate version I have here, which is a little bit more Dominus-focused. This is my personal bias, but I think Spark +1 plus Imperm is a ridiculously strong hand trap suite that you get to play in mono light, mono dark decks. Whether or not it's worth shaving copies of Ether Barrel is really hard to say. I'm going to assume the answer is probably no in reality, but it also depends on when we play these cards and what the format looks like as well. So Just as a separate idea, figured I'd include it. Moving on to the next idea, Dark Magician up next. We get to use, obviously, the new Dark Magician, the Pharaoh's Servant, as well as Dark Magical Curtain, which are both very, very strong options. The first list, again, more generic. Second list, more Dominus focused. So we'll take a look at this first one first and foremost. Unsure if I want to play Primite Roar in it. That was the one card that I was a little back and forth on. Turning your Primite engine into Dark Magician to Destruction is important, though. So I think this probably does justify its place in the list. There's still some things that probably need changed, especially with the printing of Dark Magical Curtain. You can look to play more copies of Magician's Rod in this deck now, instead of potentially one of the copies of Souls, one of the copies of Gaze of Timaeus, even one of the copies of Soul Servant. Soul Servant can be kind of awkward as a solo draw. Most of the time you want to be searching into it because it searches you your other cards by proxy, especially because you're going to be drawing 2/1/2 a lot of the time, so not complaining about that at all. I think this is generally what the list will look like. You can go Diabellstar angle instead of Dark Magician the Apprentice, but I think that the synergy with Soul Servant justifies this one being the choice, personally, but hard to say. I think either way, I think they're both interesting. This is the one that I think for the Dominus versions makes more sense. I think the Primite part of this deck is potent and does matter, but just not as much as Blue Eyes. Oh, I forgot to mention that I cut Eternal Soul in the first one. I should cut Eternal Soul in both of these, honestly. This Eternal Soul should probably be a second Magician's Rod. I think Eternal Soul is just the worst card in this deck. Sorry, I hate Eternal Soul so much, like an unreasonable amount. But these are just generally a couple of ideas I thought of for DM. I think, again, more copies of Magician's Rod for the new Overframe is a good idea. I didn't even put the new Overframe in the other version. Whoops. So yeah, we'll stick to this one. But you can see the idea regardless for both of these. Moving on, did want to also include, a couple of decks that are just including some of these random cards that look good generically. Synchro Emergency is going to be the main one. We're going to see a couple of these throughout these deck lists, but again, turn 0 Black Rose is just really good. I don't think anyone is really surprised about that. Turn 0 Black Rose is strong. That's just all there is to Synchro Emergency specifically. One of the big downsides of Synchro Emergency is it sort of has the worst of both worlds as a hand trap, where it's sort of the Gamma Driver suite where you play this one brick just to enable like an incredibly strong hand trap, but then it does also -1 you from hand. So there are definitely some ways that this card can be really awkward, but in a deck like this that already has turn 0 ability with Regina, I think the card is very, very strong and is at least worth looking into and considering at the very least. Next up, we're going to take a look at, oh boy, this one. People are going to get mad at me for this one, but this is my Galaxy Eyes list, and you might notice there's no Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon in this list, and that's on purpose. That card sucks. My methodology when making this was to make it as consistent as possible while still being... I don't know. Honestly, I can't even excuse this one. Not playing Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon was just something I wanted to try to make work and kind of did. There's a ton of one-card combos, a lot of 1.5s with Galaxy Soldier as well. You're maintaining relative consistency. You're doing a relatively mid-range but powerful combo. I think that's all this deck really needs to do. Again, I think you can all notice a pattern with my addiction to non-engine and Dominuses, but I think that is genuinely the way that you make bad decks good. You don't put in more bad cards into a deck like this and expect it to get better, right? You just put good cards in and you play as many of your good cards as possible. If you don't want to play Dominuses or you don't want to play Purge specifically, you should probably play 3 Scorched Child Infinity, but yeah, that's the only main thing to point out. I think this deck is very funny, and I think it probably can top some smaller regionals. I don't think it'll be making any major splashes. Next up, another example for Synchro Emergency is Cool Tune with Wheel Synchron. You can play Assault Synchron instead to go and do your cool tune turn zeros a little bit more consistently and efficiently, as it's essentially just 2 or 3 more copies of clip at that point. Or you can do wheel synchron into either Black Rose or Packbit. I think wheel synchron into Black Rose Packbit, letting you do something you weren't able to do before, and generally I think those are much stronger interactions, is better. But there's a reality where you could do Assault Synchron into whatever cool tune stuff you want as well. To note, before I get a comment about it, you can use this as a non-tuner for Black Rose with all your cool tune tuners. That's the reason it has to be wheel synchron specifically. And I believe... Oh, I got a little too depressed when I was deck building Pendulum. There's a version of Pendulum that I think is good and is relevant enough to see play. I just don't... I think I'm too separated from what Pendulum is trying to do at the moment. Next up, one of the best examples, obviously we're seeing Red Dragon Archfiend's Chain here, but also Quetzalcoatl. I think this is probably the best Quetzalcoatl deck at utilizing it at its full efficiency. I mean, obviously I said earlier where we see combos where you go Red Rising into Crimson Blade. Obviously, I think I said Crystal Wing back then, but that's not true. You're going to go into Crimson King, and then through your Hot Red Abyss into your Dispatter into your Quetzalcoatl, right? Like, that is so much interaction you're bringing back off of this card. It is ridiculous how much you get to do. And you get to do it with, like, again, only 5 or 6 bodies. I'll probably have edited it in the combo somewhere here, so yeah. The Stone Sweepers are here for me to remember they exist. There is a reality where you need more consistency in this deck. I haven't theoried it out enough. You can play Stone Sweeper or Resonator Call. Resonator Call isn't once per turn, but loses to Flame and Droll technically a little bit harder. There's positives and negatives. It's a matter of, like, what do you want to play instead. So yeah. You can play any of your additional consistency pieces. And then we do have the Rocket deck. This is one that I think I believe in more than most. Again, you can see my addiction to non-engine coming through with 20 to 22 non-engine, depending on how you count the Bestials. I think this is genuinely the best way to be playing this deck. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 other engine adjacent things you can look to play, but I think trying to slim and refine down what this deck is doing has always been good. I mean, how many times throughout history have we seen D-Link be able to do some truly inane things and then just prefer to end on Sphere's Tidying Pass, right? I think doing something that is good consistently while being like a closer to mid-range style deck fits D-Link very well, but Rocket Barrage lets it sort of flex into being a more heavy combo deck without any of the costs that are normally associated with that. I think, long story short, I think this deck will be at least tier 2. I would be very surprised if it wasn't. Again, gets to play, in my opinion, one of the best hand trap suites, which is Spark, Impulse, Imperm, which is just insane, right? I think any deck that gets to play these 9 hand traps is automatically better than most other decks, just at a baseline level. But this could very well flop. I think it's very possible. I think that the Dispatter also, just as a small note, should be in the extra deck. Whether or not that's over Liberator or like Draco Berserker or Typhon is up for debate. But that should probably be one of the things that you're trying to tunnel into with your Magnamut plus Tracer a lot of the time. But it just didn't fit any of the combos that I was doing with this previous lead upload. But yeah, I think Rocket is very strong and will be at least a solid option. I believe the last one we have on up is my personal favorite, which is the Synchron deck. Those of you that saw one of my previous videos, which was the Synchron combo, know just how insane some of the combos with this deck get. And that's before we knew Synchro Emergency existed. Obviously, not going to help you with any of the combos and isn't searchable in any way, but... Or apologies, it's not searchable in any way that you actually play. I think there is a way to search Synchro cards, but they're all bad. But yeah, I think that this is one of the decks that I think I'm looking forward to the most. I think it has a lot of very potent extension options. It has a lot of one-card combos. It does them very efficiently and through interruption really well. And then obviously the boards are ridiculous. I think that's like complete overkill, especially in the video I put out before. Um, but just as a proof of concept and on paper, this archetype looks incredible. The only thing I haven't had a lot of opportunity to test more in depth is how well it goes second. Obviously, that's a big thing. But if you're able to do the go first part really well, you can sort of handhold the going second part. I mean, again, we're playing the most broken non-engine in the game. We're playing Synchro Emergency. We're playing Fedralis Harmonia. We're playing all the Mulch Armies and all that. Yada, yada, yada. So, yeah, I think this is another very strong deck. I think this one, is probably going to be a little weaker than Rocket, if I had to guess. I think it's going to be weird because I think this is the kind of deck that will not ever see play in the OCG. But in the TCG, this is the kind of deck that could just randomly pop off for one event and then never be seen again. So if you want to try to be that one person alongside me, hop on board. But this is another one of those decks that Quetzalcoatl is just completely inane, broken, busted bonkers in. It's just not anywhere near close to balanced. Again, we see Zalin into Crystal, into Patter, into 11, into this. Like, okay, sure. We just get to do whatever we want. So yeah. This is, again, one of those decks that really has a lot of potential, and I'm super, super excited to see what it does in the future. With that being said, that should do it for us today. Thank you all so much for all of you joining. Be sure to drop a subscribe as well as, a like if you did enjoy it. Let me know if you would have made any improvements to this list or if there's any cards you would have changed the order of. I'm super happy to see if there's any of those in the comment. With that being said, be sure to stay tuned. Thank you all so much for watching, and that'll do it for me today. Have a good one.